Hey, it's Sam, and as you can see, I'm here presenting the full moon in Sagittarius. It's happening on June 21st, 2024. It's in the nakshatra of Mula, which is about uprooting, pulling out by the roots. And this full moon is opposite the Sun, Mercury, and Venus in Gemini. And of course, full moons are very much a time to align and sort of harmonize the energy between two signs. Of course, I'm going to be talking about those things. Sagittarius, Mula Nakshatra. Also, of course, you can get the full member forecast at the website when you click samsmembersite.com or just click the subscribe button. But that's what we're going to be talking about here today, this full moon in Sagittarius.
Please like the video. Clicking like helps a lot more than you know. It pushes the video higher in relevant video searches. Also, please leave a nice comment. Comments also help more than you know as it raises the video in searches. Many times with hundreds of likes, there are only a dozen comments and they can be disproportionately negative. So be positive. Let me know if you like this. Even just a few words really helps. So subscribe, ring the bell to get notified of upcoming videos. Thanks.
Yeah, there's no doubt that there'll be thousands of people watch this, and only 25% will be subscribers. So please go ahead and subscribe if you appreciate this. I do quality updates like this all the time, and I even do a lot of case studies. You can see here I just did a free class on the 5 Lagitati Avashtas. This was for my members at the Oracle 5D level. Again, check out the levels of membership as well so that you can stay up to date. And also, by the way, I do this full moon in Sagittarius for all 12 signs, and I'll talk a little more about that as we go forward. But first, the thing to understand is that these full moons and new moons are related to, of course, the moon, because the moon keeps waxing and waning, going back and forth in the sky. And the moon is the part of us that is fluctuating in our mind and consciousness. And in the sky, the same thing happens, right? So we recently had a new moon that happened in the sign of Taurus. That was a couple weeks ago. And that started a new cycle. And I did, of course, a new moon update at that time. Then the halfway point in that cycle now is happening in Gemini. And I'm sorry, it's happening in Sagittarius, and the sun has moved in Gemini. So this shows again, a sort of harmonizing energy where we're always trying to harmonize the energy of where the sun is. And as you see now, we have Sun, Mercury, Venus in Gemini, which is about ideas, reliance on concepts, again, all the details, communication. We're trying to harmonize that focus with the opposite, which is the sign of Sagittarius, which has to do with the big picture, higher philosophies. And throughout our life, and especially throughout the year, these waxing and waning cycles are happening, and they hit their extremes when we have the full moons and the new moons. Now, we tend to focus more on the full moon because we can see it. And by the way, the ancient people did the same thing. Their lunar months, the calendar months, or the solar-lunar calendar, I should say, is actually based mostly on the nakshatra of the full moon. And again, in this case, the nakshatra is Sagittarius, is Mula. So this is a whole kind of way of understanding the year in these sort of 2-week portions. There's about 24 cycles of, first there's a new moon, then 2 weeks later a full moon, then 2 weeks later a new moon, etc. Every 15 days approximately, we have a new lunation, as it's called. So we're now at that stage where this moon has waxed and waned. Now it's waxing, and it will be a full moon in Sagittarius. So as it says here, Sagittarius is the sign expressing the masculine nature of Jupiter, because the signs are the masculine or feminine nature of the planets that rule them. Sagittarius is meaningless without Jupiter as the ruler. And of course, these are classical rulerships. Modern Western astrology uses outer planets for, rulerships, but that's not really sound when you're talking about classical astrology, which existed thousands of years before any of the outer planets were even discovered. So that masculine nature of Jupiter is what Sagittarius is, the planet of expansion, hope, wealth, and growth. All growth. So through Sagittarius, Jupiter expresses himself into the world. You will notice a Sagittarius type of person will be optimistic, perhaps even cheerful, even in spite of difficulty. They tend to focus on the bigger picture, on the larger meaning, and on things that are bigger than just what makes them happy or sad in the moment. However, many times a Sagittarius person, and by extension the Sagittarius energy, can miss the moment entirely because they're preoccupied with some big idea or big hope, or that's somewhat disconnected from the moment. So this is one of the sources of tension between Gemini and Sagittarius. Sagittarius is about, again, the big picture, some big philosophy that often misses the details of the moment, and even really can miss the details of what's being communicated, like clearly. For example, I'll give you an example. You see a lot of it online, even with online arguments, or someone, I'll just give you my experiences that happen. I'll make videos where I'll say 1,000 specific things, like I'm doing here, all these details, every specific thing. And I can say all these specific details. This is very much a Mercury and Gemini thing. And then someone can come and make a comment that says, oh, that's not how it is. You're just blah, blah, for example. Or, no, it's really this. And I'll say, do you care to say anything specific? Or is it just some big idea that you didn't like? For example. Again, I'm not trying to make a big deal out of from my perspective, but this is a collision of details and the bigger picture, right? And so this is a big Sagittarius Gemini clash, a big Jupiter Mercury clash, where Jupiter is also very philosophical. Again, this bigger picture. So for example, like if I, now our big hot button issues, things like politics, and again, our sense of hope and purpose and meaning, a lot of that is wrapped up in this Jupiter stuff. And again, people like politicians and even others that inspire us, like great musicians or others that inspire us, are very connected to Jupiter and very connected to Sagittarius. These are the things that give us hope, right? And, different religious leaders, cult figures, people that we follow, Taylor Swift has a big Sagittarius Jupiter kind of nature, right? Without looking at her chart, but I'm just saying people look up to her, right? But if I were to say something like, let's say I were to do a chart reading of her, right, where I looked at all these specific details that, oh, she's like this, or maybe this or that, and people didn't like it, instead of even listening to the details and even talking about the details, they can just kind of miss it and be preoccupied, like I said here, with some big hope or big philosophy that's disconnected from the moment. Now, I'm using this as an example, but you can see the same thing, like when you're trying to talk with someone who they don't believe the same thing as you do, and they can just dismiss you because, well, you just don't get it. As it says here, many times rather than deal with unpleasant emotions and the drudgery of working through difficulties with people, a Sagittarian or the Sagittarius energy will often explain it away with some big philosophy or some big laissez-faire attitude that dismisses the other person or the other person's ideas, or like the ideas I just said here, as just not understanding the real picture or the bigger picture. Of course, that happens with me when I talk about certain political figures. Even if I talk about the truth or the facts of something that we all saw that happened, rather than acknowledge, oh yeah, that thing happened, there's this desire to want to go, no, I don't believe it. And again, this is kind of the negative quality of Sagittarius, and like the negative quality of like blind faith and religion and just believing in things without using our discrimination, right? And so this is that sort of collision between Gemini and Sagittarius. This is where they really collide, so to speak. And so, again, and that's in a kind of detrimental context. In a higher context, it's where these things are in harmony with each other. Because what happens is if we have too much Gemini and it's just about details, and we're just kind of like a computer with no connection to the bigger picture, Gemini can just want to play around with ideas, sort of batting ideas back and forth, or everything becomes just a kind of contrarian game where, like a little kid who just keeps going, but why? And then you try to answer them and then they'll go, why? You know how kids will, if they know that they can get on your nerves, they'll just keep saying why, or, just kind of relentlessly playing devil's advocate no matter what someone says. People who aren't really interested in understanding, they're just entertaining themselves and amusing themselves by being contrary. That's kind of the negative quality of Gemini. Or also where we think we're smarter than we actually are. Again, this is a big problem these days. And again, I'll just say, even with my work as an astrology teacher, more and more these days, particularly as more people are online, more people gather information, and consequently, more people think they know more than they do. And again, it's not insulting. And some people don't like when I say this, and I'm not trying to be insulting. It's great that people are curious, let's say, about these things and gather information about it and are curious, which is the Gemini principle. And if you take it deeper, then it can also be real insight and knowledge. But it's very easy to be playing around with things and not connect them to the bigger picture, or even like great teachings or great gurus or great wisdom, and just think, well, I'll just figure it all out myself, and I'm smart enough. Again, and think that we know more than we do, when there's really only a couple good sources of wisdom, and a bunch of information isn't wisdom. I don't care how much someone likes it or whatever, it's not wisdom, right? If it's not connected to that pure source. So this is how Gemini and Sagittarius also work in tandem and work to support each other. So you always want to see that range of potential, right? And so at best, they're both in harmony, and they each contain the opposite resolution point of the other one, right? The resolution point of Gemini can't really resolve until it connects with bigger picture, right? Which is the Jupiter Sagittarius energy. Sagittarius energy, which is that sort of belief and that bigger picture, is somewhat meaningless if it's disconnected from facts and ideas and explanations and communication. This is why you'll see, again, a lot of religious hypocrisy and dogma in Sagittarius in the negative context. People that just believe in things, but they can't explain it. Or when they do try to explain it, there's just a bunch of nonsense falls out of their mouth because they just believe it, and that's it. God said it, I believe it, and that settles it. I remember that bumper sticker when I was a kid. Jumped out at me. And again, and then with Gemini, it's like, you'll never convince me, because I can always find problems with, any type of system. And by the way, things like atheism, it finds its excesses in excessive Mercury, either Gemini or Virgo energy, where you will judge something like all faith and all religion and all belief on its worst excesses. Like you could just completely dismiss any kind of spirituality or belief or God as just, oh, so the old man in the sky would create everything and then punish and send us all to hell. Yeah, right. And just kind of like, oh, you're just so smart that you can just annihilate common sense by focusing on the most narrow detail. So again, both of them are they have to be used in a complementary way. And so I'm talking about these two extremes because that's what the full moons are. They're extremes, right? The sun is all the way over here, and then completely opposite. You see the sun 6:53, the moon 6, and you see it's Mula Nakshatra, and Mula there's actually a black hole there. It's at the center of our galaxy, and we're looking back at the black hole at the center of our galaxy. That last section of the zodiac is what begins in this Sagittarius section. We have the first 4 signs, then the middle 4, then the last 4. And so the last section of the zodiac from Sagittarius to Pisces is where the soul becomes free and liberated from the tangle of materiality that is typified by the section of the zodiac from Leo to Scorpio. That's the worldly section of the zodiac. The first nakshatra in this section is Mula, where we uproot and plants the seeds of truth and wisdom. It's the first section of Sagittarius. After facing the dark chasm of Scorpio, we're compelled to look for higher meaning and purpose in Sagittarius. Because Scorpio, the sign before, this is where this middle section of the zodiac ends, that worldly power section. And we realize, oh my God, I have no control over any of this. One day it's all going to end. Then I have no control. What's the higher meaning and purpose? That's the Sagittarius equation. So Mula means root, but it's also where we uproot and then plant seeds of new karma and higher purpose in our mind and consciousness. So we need to then pull out all of that fear, frustration of Scorpio and plant new seeds of karma. And it's the karma that liberates us. These last 4 sections, these last 4 signs. The Jupiter and Saturn ruled signs are the last section of the zodiac where the soul is becoming liberated. So the deity in this nakshatra is called Niriti, which literally means calamity, and it's most typified by the goddess Kali in modern Indian myths. Kali is dancing that dance of destruction and destroying all of our ignorance. So this section of the sky where we have Mula is opposite the sky where we have Ardra Nakshatra. You see the sun is in Ardra and the moon is in Mula. Ardra is related to Lord Shiva. And you see we have Sun, Venus, and Mercury all in Ardra right now, which is looking away from the center of the galaxy, right? And when we have this full moon in Mula, when you look up in the sky and see the moon on Friday, you're looking back into the center, back into the center of the galaxy. You're looking right back into the center of the galaxy, and right behind the moon is the gigantic black hole at the center of our galaxy. So the middle of Mula is a black hole that is, again, at the center of our galaxy. And so when you see the moon, this full moon on Friday, know that right behind it is the black hole. And so this cosmology is not incidental. It's not just a coincidence. Wow, it's such a coincidence that the black hole, that the deity associated with that is Kali, the destructive goddess. Yeah, and opposite that is Shiva, Ardra, while we're looking away. Oh, what a coincidence. Not a coincidence, guys. And by the way, this is also why you should know and don't ever waver or doubt that these nakshatras are aligned with the zodiac signs. Again, Vedic astrology is a sidereal zodiac. There is no tropical zodiac signs in Vedic astrology. Everything is pinned to the nakshatras. This is why, again, in Western astrology, this is actually at the very end of Sagittarius in Western astrology as well, I'm pretty sure. But, of course, in Vedic astrology, it's 6 degrees of Sagittarius, right squarely in the middle of Mula Nakshatra, right? And it's because we know that the beginning of the zodiac starts in Ashwini, and Aries starts with the zodiac aligned with nakshatras and zodiac signs. And then by the time we get to here, we have Mula Nakshatra and the beginning of Sagittarius. So and the reason I say this is because then all of this lines up in sync. The nakshatras and the signs are all in sync. It was never confusing. And so you should understand that this is, again, one of those perfect sections of the sky where you really see that. And by the way, like I said at the beginning, and you should really understand that all of these new moons and full moons will affect all of us differently. So this sign of Sagittarius, for example, if you're a Scorpio person, this is a full moon in your 2nd house, and it's opposite the sun in your 8th house. So again, if you're a Libra person, this full moon is in your 3rd house. It's very different. In fact, it's completely different. All of us are under the Sagittarius moon, right? And the nakshatra of Mula and opposite Gemini. This is a general thing that we can all feel. But if you're Aquarius, it's affecting you completely different than, again, if you're Aries. If you're Sagittarius, if you're Aquarius, it's full moon in your 11th house, which has to do with the public and ambition. If you're Aries, it's happening in your 9th house, which is about teachers and gurus. If you're Gemini, like me, it's happening in your 7th house, which is other people. So this is why I do these forecasts for each of the 12 signs. Again, at this level, it's only $9.99. You can get the full moons and the new moons. And you also get the weekly overview. As you can see, these were all done this week. And I also uploaded a new Oracle 5D class, an overview of the Logitati Avashtas, and we also do the Vedic week ahead for the Pleiadian level. So again, you can see these perks. Most people get the Oracle 5D, but even if you just want to know how this works for your sign, this full moon in Sagittarius, you're encouraged to do that. People wind up staying a member for years. And I've been doing these forecasts this way for more than, I started 2008. So what is it, 16 years? I've been doing these new moon and full moon forecasts for all 12 signs. This is how I use astrology. People ask me all the time, how do I get started? One of the best ways is this. So again, people are like, oh, but $9.99. Oh my God, will I survive? It's like, so this is a great way for you to understand and to connect more personally with these cycles. Just based on your Vedic rising sign, this will impact you enormously. So I definitely encourage you to do that as well. But again, either way, this is very transformative. And as you can see, we have these planets lined up this way. A lot of planets in high dignity as well. Saturn is in Aquarius. Mars is in Aries. Again, these planets rule these signs. And Mercury is in Gemini. So we have 3 planets in their own sign right now. So it's a great time for higher wisdom, higher truth to come forth. And this Gemini Sagittarius axis that I talked about is also very much emblematic of the things I'm talking about now. So many people now interested in astrology, and it's great that people are dabbling and kind of self-taught. But at some point, you have to get real teachings, right? And once you do that, then it's like the fast track. Like I just taught this course. This is at the Oracle 5D level on what are called Avashtas. That might sound like a confusing word, but when you join at that level and you see me go over this, it's actually an incredibly practical way of analyzing the planets and analyzing things that you think you already know, like how planets and signs, and how those planets and signs create what's called a dignity, and how to really understand those things through a level of wakefulness and sleep, a level of maturity, a level of, feeling excited or feeling alarmed or feeling preyed upon, feeling hungry, thirsty, all kinds of interesting ways that takes your curiosity and you're like, well, I'm just kind of teaching myself, and get you on a track where you really can see what you're doing. And by the way, these forecasts as well, I do this Vedic week ahead every week. Again, I break down all of these things that you see here. Again, this would be the nakshatra of Mula. This would be Purnima, right? That's happening on Friday. These are 4, indicators: Sagittarius, Mula, Purnima, which is the Tithi, and Mula is the nakshatra, right? And the day before, Scorpio is the Rashi, the Tithi is the 14th, Chaturdashi, the nakshatra is Jeshta, right? And so again, this Vedic week ahead, the Vedic Panchanga, incredibly powerful stuff to stay up to date every day. And again, the price of these things, most of it is like less than $1 a day. I mean, to get all of these videos, less than $1 a day, and really stay up to date and see how these things really affect you. So I'm talking about this, quite a bit here, because it actually also is very much in alignment and analogous with this Gemini Sagittarius energy. Everybody thinks, oh, I really want to know, or I know more than I really do. Again, like I said, not to be rude, but people think they understand more than they do. That's the Gemini kind of illusion. And then the illusion of Sagittarius is also a kind of like, well, it just gives me hope. And again, you really find a point of closure and symmetry and synergy between Sagittarius and Gemini in learning these great teachings properly. Again, proper instruction, right? So anyway, just letting you know that that's also available. But aside from that, I hope this was helpful for you, and thanks a lot.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel.